Honourable Member for Parkdale-HighPark.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Speaker, in recent weeks, parliamentarians have been invited to investigate and look into this budget implementation bill. And as we've said for weeks now, this bill is a Trojan horse. It contains a host of measures that will have repercussions, including on old age security, on transfers for health, and right through to immigration. More than 1/3 of this bill contain changes to regulations governing the environment. In a few words, this bill will repeal the Kyoto Protocol and consequently cancels all international accountability measures on climate change. The bill, once again, will repeal the current Environmental Assessment Act and consequently will enable the Conservatives to considerably weaken the assessment system. Mr. Speaker, this bill will dismantle measures that have been put in place to protect our environment and is turning its back on climate change. So imagine what the rest of the bill contains. It's over 400 pages long. The bill is amending some different 60 pieces of legislation in Canada. It includes a complete changes to the Environmental Assistance Act.
growth and long-term prosperity does not reflect its content, since much of this bill has nothing to do with the budget, first of all, but also because this bill is in fact about austerity. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has confirmed that public sector job cuts will be in the order of 26,800 over the next 3 years. In addition, about 6,000 contract positions are being cut. The government has refused to detail where many of these cuts will be made, but certainly there are many services and programs that Canadians rely on that will be diminished or eliminated. It also seems clear that since our economic recovery has stalled and in the face of global economic uncertainty, the last thing we need is further cutbacks, which will be a further drag on the overall economy. Have we gained new jobs from the very depths of the economic downturn in 08-09? Yes, of course. But since the employment rate fell dramatically by 2.5% of the working-age population at that time, it's only rebounded by 0.6%. So only about a fifth of the labour market damage from the recession has been repaired. And between 1 in 4 and 1 of 3 net new jobs created in Canada from the end of 07 to the end of 2011 actually went to temporary foreign workers. So we've still not recovered from the lost jobs, and we've not kept up with population growth. And yet, changes in this bill to employment insurance, rather than helping Canadian families adjust to a chronic shortage of jobs in most parts of the country, seem designed to compel them to abandon their skills in a rush to take any job at all. What a waste of skills at a time when Canada needs vision and leadership to help us transition to a more modern and environmentally sustainable economy. Nous avons quelque peu réussi à ouvrir le débat.
We have to some extent succeeded in opening the debate, the Minister confirmed. What some measures are, but this can't replace the normal democratic process. The opposition to this omnibus bill is not something that the Conservatives appear to be concerned about today. But, Mr. Speaker, this bill is different. Many of the measures proposed in this bill are there for the first time. We've never heard about them before. But despite that, the government is determined to adopt the bill quickly without consulting Canadians and their elected representatives, without more in-depth consideration by experts.
Not only does this make a mockery of the Confidence Convention, shielding bills that would otherwise be defeatable within a money bill, which it is not, it makes it impossible to know what Parliament really intended by any of it. We've no idea whether MPs supported or opposed any particular bill included in the bunch, only that they voted for or against the legislation contained in them. There's no common thread that runs between them, no overarching principle. They represent not a single act of policy, but a sort of compulsory buffet. There's something quite alarming about Parliament being obliged to rubber stamp the government's legislative agenda at one go. So this from a Conservative commentator, and I couldn't agree more. L'approche des conservateurs est en effet.
The Conservatives' approach is very troublesome. The official opposition has attempted to work with the government with a bill to splitting the bill in order to put various measures to more substantive debate and consideration in the appropriate committees. The Conservatives have refused that request. We asked for sufficient time to examine the bill at the Finance Committee, but the Conservatives gave us a mere 4 minutes per clause. They've refused to give us more time for witnesses when witnesses found themselves in a situation where they couldn't attend because the schedule was tightly controlled by the Conservatives, and this too hindered debate.
Part 3 of this bill had even less time, just 12 hours, to hear from witnesses on a wide variety of changes to environmental regulation and changes impacting our fisheries and species at risk, including an entirely rewritten Environmental Assessment Act. Our colleagues on the subcommittee reported that hearings were often rushed, often interrupted, and the consultation was extremely limited, and that the lack of opportunity to draw on the expertise of the standing committees on environment, fisheries, and natural resources prevented a proper and robust evaluation of the proposals in the bill. I regret to say that our experience in the Finance Committee was much the same. The extremely tight timeline made it impossible for several witnesses to appear, which significantly cut down on our hearing time. And some witnesses who did appear but didn't support the government's position often had their testimony dismissed. One economist had his work dismissed as garbage, and Paul Kennedy, who spent 20 years of experience in the area of national security, who served as a senior assistant to the Deputy Minister of Public Safety, had his testimony dismissed as simply wrong. His error? He voiced concern over the impact of the elimination of the position of the Inspector General of CSIS. Canadians have every right to expect that their government will listen to the public. Well, New Democrats were listening, both at committee and at public hearings across the country. We heard from Dr. Hagee of the Canadian Medical Association, who warned that raising the age of eligibility to old age security is certain to have a negative impact. He emphasized gnawing away at Canada's social safety net will no doubt force hard choices on some of tomorrow's seniors. The choice between whether to buy groceries or buy their medicine, in the end, this will put a greater burden on our healthcare system. We heard from a number of experts who warned that the proposed changes to employment insurance will contribute to a low-wage policy by forcing people to take significant pay cuts or be cut off from the benefits they paid into. One, Professor Marjorie Griffin, said, when you go from making $14 or $15 an hour to $10.25, the minimum wage, that makes a very huge difference. This legislation will contribute to a low-wage policy, and the vast majority of low-wage workers are women already, so these policies will affect them, and I want the committee to understand that. Mr. Speaker, last fall I spoke with one of my constituents who come to Ottawa to protest peacefully on Parliament Hill against this government's inaction on climate change. She's in her 60s, had never participated in civil disobedience or been arrested, but she felt so strongly that Canada was going down the wrong path and the government wasn't listening. She felt she had to do something, so she traveled to Ottawa to make her voice heard. This person is not a radical. Is it radical to believe that government policy should involve public debate? In a democracy, these should be commonplace, but the Conservatives are determined to shut down debate. We have fought tooth and nail every step of the way to have debate on this bill. We will continue to do so. That's why we brought witnesses forward to the Finance Committee and Subcommittee. It's why we held hearings across the country, and we're trying to make it clear we don't want the government to balance its books on the backs of seniors. and to make clear that changes to EI, massive changes, should only come after a substantive debate. Mr. Speaker, I see I'm out of time. We want to provide an opportunity for all Canadians to have their voice heard on this important bill, which will have very real impacts into their futures now and going on generations. Thank you.